Hey guys, it's your boy Jay, and this is Football Talk. And in this one, I will be reacting to the College Football 25 rankings are out, and people are mad. Now, I did see the rankings from Twitter, and yes, there are some I do not agree with, but it can always change. But I also see why people are upset. But let's be honest, people are always going to be upset no matter what. When it comes to ratings, rankings, all of that, people are going to be upset. Like I said, there's some I do not agree with personally, but at the same time, we're basing this off of what we think going to happen. Me personally, I don't even know all the players that play for LSU. I don't know the players to look out for, really, you know? So, I don't know. So, I can't be mad at this is just predictions, you know? So, but without further ado, though, let's jump right into it.
News about EA Sports College Football 25 to go over today. So earlier today, EA Sports did release the top 25 offenses and the top 25 defenses for the upcoming game, which means a lot of people are going to be mad today because anytime somebody ranks anything, everybody gets mad. It doesn't matter who's ranking it. It doesn't matter what's being ranked. No one's ever going to agree, and there's really never a definitive way to rank anything. So it's always a big topic of debate. I've already seen a lot of people on Twitter being really angry today. I know from dealing with Madden over the years, people always get mad.
I'm sorry pausing so early. Twitter is the place for drama. It's the place where everybody hates everything. The only time I go on Twitter is if I need a screenshot of something to put in a video, or I just see some updates about something I'm interested in. I don't go to the comments. I really do not go to the comments because all the comments are negative for most part. You get some here and there that's like, all right, cool, but most of them are negative. So I'm not surprised at all.
Over the rating, so it's always kind of a fun thing to talk about because let's be honest, everybody thinks their team is top 5 or top 10 at everything, and
yeah, that's facts.
Not everybody can be top 5 or top 10. Also, there's always going to be some controversial rankings.
LSU defensive rating was a surprise,
but if you don't want to miss out on any of the upcoming news for this,
to me at least.
Dynasty deep dive, I believe next week. We're gonna have some gameplay coming soon as well. Make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on so you don't miss those videos when they go live. I'd really like to hit 600K subs before the release of this game, so if everybody watching just subscribed, we could hit that number in a few days. So here on their website, they made a post about the offensive and defensive power rankings, and they kind of explained what goes into them, and they said the development team meticulously examined hundreds of thousands of data points to arrive at our team's power rankings. With the help of our friends at Pro Football Focus, the team analyzed all 134 rosters, thousands of players, years worth of game film, and mountains of stats, ultimately arriving at our team's power rankings. The rankings are subject to change in future updates, which they will. These things will probably change every week, just like they do in Madden. So
see, that's why I don't get mad about this.
Pointless because within a few weeks of the game being out, there can be some pretty significant differences here, but this is just a starting point. Also, something to note before we jump into this that you need to consider is that rankings for something like this are also heavily projection based. So they are going off of, previous years. They're going over the rosters.
Said that in my intro.
Who they lost, coaching changes, all that stuff, of course. But they're also in some ways projecting what they think they're going to do this year. So just because a team did good last year, well, if they lost a ton of good players, if they changed coaches and there's uncertainty, well, they might not be projected to do as good this year. So yeah,
LSU fan, you know about this.
Regardless, there's going to be a lot of
coming off the championship, then 2020 season.
I disagree with. So let's look. Here are the top 10 offenses to start. We have Georgia at a 94 overall, Oregon at a 94 overall, so they're tied for the top spot technically. We've got Alabama at 91, Texas at 91, Ohio State at 89, LSU at 89, Miami at 89, Colorado at 89, Missouri at 89, and Clemson at 87. Now, the first thing I've seen people complain about just off of the top 10 was that Colorado was too high, and this is pretty high based off what they did last year. However, I do think
I'm gonna tell you why Colorado is up there. They are probably the most, and I'm saying this in the most respectful way, man, one of the most overhyped. Wasn't they 4-8? Didn't they finish 4-8? They are probably, to me, in my lifetime, the most overhyped 4-18 I've ever seen. I mean, just as a team. I'm not talking about individuals because they got talent, But just as an overall team, the amount of attention that they was getting, you would have thought they was the #1 team in the country. And I'm pretty sure at that time, wasn't Georgia, was it, because it was like back and forth. I think it was Georgia at the time that was like #1. I could be wrong. Or Michigan. It was one of them. Like, they was all going back. Ohio State was in it. They was all going back and forth. But they didn't even get that much attention. Like, the talk of the whole sports community, not even football, just sports community, especially particularly in America, was all about Colorado. And they had only won 4 games. And the only reason why is because they beat TCU, who went to the national championship and got their ass whooped last year. Won the worst championship game I had ever seen. But thanks for watching also. Let's see. Ones I'm kind of... Missouri, I understand they got some good talent. Clemson is going to be very interesting because they have really fallen off, in my opinion. Last year, my goodness. I don't even think I even reacted. Maybe I did react to a game of Clemson's last year, maybe a couple, but I can't remember them. Miami, Miami always recruit well. I mean, it's based off of their past. Let's be honest. LSU at 89. Like I said, I don't know who's who for LSU. You know what I mean? So, like, I can't really say anything. But like I said, these are kind of like, you can take these as preseason predictions in a way. Yeah, but Oregon 94, I mean, who did they lose though? Bo Nixon left, right? What, that number 5 guy, did he leave? Did he go to the draft? I remember seeing him. So, you know, I can't really be... I don't see how people can be mad.
Every year they've played together. They've returned a lot of players. They've got continuity. Will they be in the top 8 or technically they're rated as a top 5 offense if you look at it, because you need to pay attention to the overall, not just the number. Technically they're tied for top 5. So I don't think they're going to be that good, but they're probably going to be significantly better than they were last year. But again, you got to factor.
They got to get running game and they offensive line. It's all about the offensive line for Colorado.
Move some people maybe higher or lower than they should be to kind of get some conversation going. And also the fact that they're using Pro Football Focus, that alone for a lot of people is a hot topic thing, because some people live and die by PFF, and then other people hate PFF and think that their system isn't very good at all, or at least that it's not good for every player or every position group. You know, there's never going to be a definitive way to rank these players. No one's going to ever agree fully. So I try not to get too angry over this stuff.
It's your time to make a greater impact. U.S. Army Reserve.
Now we're going to move on to 11 through 25. So we've got a few teams here at 87 overall.
I ain't see this.
All these teams are technically tied for the 10th spot because they're all 87 overall. You've got Utah, Penn State, Ole Miss, Kansas, Arizona, and NC State. Next, we've got a bunch of teams at 85 overall. We've got Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Memphis, SMU, and
Memphis. Okay.
And then we've got the remaining 83 overalls to round out the top 25, which is Florida
State did lose a lot of people.
USC. Now, keep in mind, this is something else you've got to pay attention to, because I think they do this on purpose to stir up conversation, to get people mad a little bit, because when people get mad,
I can see it.
They're going to comment on them more, which gives it more promotion. There's probably a lot of teams that are at 83 overall offense, and they're going to leave some of them out of the top 25 for different reasons. They're going to leave them out because maybe it's going to stir up conversation, or maybe because they think some of these other teams are just more notable, or they're going to create more conversation. Because, for example, a team that I saw a lot of people say should be in the top 25 is Tennessee. Now, obviously, they lost some important players, but I would expect Tennessee to still be a pretty good offense. They very well may be rated at 83 overall offense, which would mean technically they would be a top 22 offense, because there's all these other teams that are at 83 overall and it starts at the 22 spot. So if you're an 83 overall offense, you're technically a top 22 offense in the game.
And 83 is a solid B. How many of us in school went at 83?
Now, another thing I saw people complain about is, how is Michigan not in the top 25? They're the defending national champs. Well, again, they might be top 22 if they're 83 overall. I'm sure they're going to at least be in the 80s because they're Michigan. But also, Michigan isn't really known as some elite offense either. They were always known as an elite defense, or at least recently. Last year, they were like 70th in yards per game. But again, you factor in other things. You know, they pulled starters early in some games because they were winning so much. You also also can factor in that, you know, their play style is a little bit more ground and pounder it was. But then you also got to
I gotta pause it right here about the Michigan thing. Do Michigan, like, the people that don't like these ratings and stuff, right? Are there actual fans of these schools? Because even I'm not a Michigan fan, but I know some people that are Michigan fans, and even they are like, we've never really been an offensive team. Even last year, I mean, it was dominated by the running game, even though that's offense, but like, you never look at Michigan like, yo. Now they had some good receivers, don't get me wrong. Quarterback, he was a good decision maker, but it was never like an offense where you like, nah, them, nah, they different. Hey, y'all corners out there. Hey, you feel me? To me personally, from the games that I did watch, like, they was dominating most of their games. I mean, what they did against Ohio State's defense, and I think I saw their defense. I think they was like the number 1, number 2. They was like I know they're in the top 10 defenses, but what they did against Ohio State's defense, the big plays that they had was like, okay. But then you see the rest of the season, it's like, okay, you know. But I don't think even like real Michigan fans are mad at this. I think it's just people just doesn't like college football.
They lost the QB, the running back, they lost other players, they lost their coach. So there's a lot of uncertainty about.
Yeah, I done forgot about that. He with the Chargers now, right?
Their best season in recent memory, they weren't even a team that was considered an elite offense anyway. But again, they might actually be in this top 25 if they're at 83 overall. We just don't know because these are only the teams that they've shown us. Now we're gonna get into the defenses, but really quickly, let me shout out today's video sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you like
Underdog Fantasy,
then you've got to be on Underdog Fantasy playing their Clemson, Notre Dame, and Michigan. And then we've got Texas, Penn State, and Utah at an 88 overall. Now, again, I'm going to kind of show you how people sometimes will get mad at this, but you have to pay attention. So some people will be like, Michigan at 7, even though that's still very high to be a top 10 defense, Michigan at 7 feels low. Michigan is one of the best defenses they were last year. They're projected to be another top defense this year. But when you look at it, they're technically a top 3 defense because there's multiple teams that are rated 90. Now, of course, could they have put Michigan in the 3 spot? Sure, but putting them in the 7th spot, again, I feel like they do this to stir up the conversation. It looks like they're rated worse than teams that they're actually on par with, but really, they're a top 3 defense in the game.
You just gotta look at the overall.
Because if you look at the 11 through 25 spot, you'll notice that there's a number of 88 overalls as well here. So you've got Florida.
Damn, they got LSU at 84.
Iowa's another one of those schools that's
been
known at least lately for having an amazing defense.
Like, yeah, Iowa is all about defense.
So good that they win a lot of games. Now, could you have put
if they offense can be just a little bit of good
as number 8 because they're 88 overall, but they leave them out of the top 10 because that's going to stir up conversation, even though they're technically rated as the 8th best defense.
Wisconsin, okay.
A few 86 overalls with Virginia Tech, Wisconsin, USC, and Auburn, and then you've got a ton of teams at 84 overall: LSU, Texas A&M, Colorado, Oklahoma State, Louisville, North Carolina, Kansas State, and Florida. And here is where the next thing comes into play. So you can see that there's a bunch of 84 overalls here, and there's probably a lot more than this. The same with offenses, how they ended at 83. There's probably a ton of 83 overall offenses, and there's probably a ton of 84.
I wonder who the worst ranked for the offense and defense in college football 25.
For the defenses of at least the top end schools, right? The smaller schools are probably going to have worse ratings because here's the thing: when you look at a school like LSU, for example, usually they were good on defense, but lately they've been very bad on defense. But they're still overall going to
LSU defense lately. Me and my subscribers can get on this field right now. I could take a couple of my subscribers, get on the field right now, and I bet you we'll score at least about 2 or 3 touchdowns. I bet you. That's how bad LSU's defense has been. And if you remember, before Joe Burrow came, it was like, why are you going to LSU as a quarterback? You're just going to hand off the ball, run it, and your defense going to keep you, and your defense is just going to be like, all you need to do is, hey, if you can score 1 touchdown, good. Just kick us a field goal, and we gonna get you home. But then when Joe Burrow came, and he did what he did his second year, because remember his first year was solid, but he was new. You know, it was still entering that period of changing of the guard. His second year, won arguably the greatest single season by a quarterback in college football history. And so after that, it made like me and others, like we kind of like, all right, we looking forward to next season. Oh, and then we hearing these things about the next quarterback. Oh, he balling out and this and that. And then that first game came and this ain't feel right. Just did not feel right. Plus it was COVID, you know. So plus Jamar, he didn't play the season, you know, which is good. I think it was great for him because I feel like if he would play that season, he probably would have dropped. He probably would have dropped, in my opinion. So I'm glad he took that. Yeah, it was just a crazy season, to be honest with you, for everybody. Crazy year, of course, due to, you know, the COVID and everything. But it was just, after that, defense last 2 years, especially last year. Last year, I couldn't watch the defense. I turned.
Have higher end talent than the smaller schools.
And we have talent.
Worse than some of those schools when you factor in who they play and you factor in, you know, the type of recruits and the talent that they have on their team. They've got some guys on that defense that are going to go high in future drafts, but you know, the coach
Perkins, one of the best at his positions.
But they still have top end players, so they're still not going to be rated in like the 70s, for example, like some of the lower schools may be, because they just don't have the same type of talent. They don't get the big name recruits. So when you're looking at these 84 overalls, this is really the bottom tier of like the notable schools, because people are saying, well, how the heck is Colorado in the top 20 or technically top 18 at an 84 overall? They were one of the worst defense. I think in yards per game, they were definitely bottom 10 last year. Now, granted,
oh damn, I didn't even see that.
They're projected to be better than that, but they were really bad.
Damn,
last
like
year.
the bottom.
So to have them in the top 20, that's something.
Yeah.
There's just no way they should be.
Oregon
and I agree. I don't think
absolutely took them to the shed and whooped their ass.
Some of the talent that they have, and you're looking and you understand that, well, 84 overall for these bigger name schools that get a lot of attention and they get a lot of recruits. 84 overall defense is not
in the comeback game against Stanford.
Really
yeah,
in my opinion, a good defense until you're like in the 88 overall. At least that's how Madden has done it in the past. So I'm thinking they're using a lot of similar.
You want to be like 80, 81 to be a solid defense.
You're not really that great of a defense for a top end school, because again, I mean, even USC being at an 86, that's not great, but it also feels higher for the level of defense they've played lately. But you also have to factor in, you know, how are they being?
They couldn't tackle a damn code. My goodness, I'm a little surprised that USC is that high. But maybe they coming out all banging.
Than a lot of schools out there. So I just kind of say that to say, when you see some of these teams at the bottom of these top 25 lists, there's probably a lot of other schools that have similar ratings here, and these are kind of considered not so good. But because they're listing certain teams like a Colorado up so high, that's going to trigger a lot of people to comment and say there's no way they should be that high, which I agree with. But at 84 overall is technically not going to be that good for a defense in this game. When you got Colorado and you're going up against these top offenses, right? These offenses that are 88 plus, you're going to kind of feel the gap there. They're not going to have the type of players that are going to be able to stop Ohio State's offense or Texas's offense or, you know, Penn State's offense, for example. And another thing you have to consider with all of this that I don't think a lot of people know, and I only know it because I've just dealt with Madden for so many years. Number one, EA doesn't really do a very wide rating scale. They never have. I think it would be better if they did. I think it would differentiate more. I think you might see it a little more in this game because there's just so many schools, so you will see, you know, some in the 70s, but like with Madden, you don't really see a wide scale. And even in this game, you're not going to see a very
what is the lowest? Who's the lowest team in Madden? What's their overall?
90 or 84. That's a pretty significant difference with the way EA scales, because you're probably not going to see a lot in the 70s. So low 80s.
Yeah, I feel like in college football though would be a little bit different.
Another thing, in my opinion, again, just from dealing with Madden for years, things like the team overall or the offense and defense overall, to me, is mostly a fake number. You can kind of dress that up to make it look like what you want, but the thing that matters is when you look at the player ratings, because even in Madden, you'll look at a team that has a high rated offense and you're like, how is their offense really rated that high? But then you look at the players and their specific ratings and you're like, this is not really that high of an offense. It doesn't really add up. And they do this a lot in Ultimate Team, even with individual players. They'll put a high overall on a specific player they're coming out, kind of makes it look enticing. But when you look at the ratings on that guy, it doesn't match up with what the overall is showing. It seems as though the overall is inflated. So I say that to say, when it comes to like the overall rankings, they do inflate stuff sometimes to make it look a certain way. And especially with this, I'm assuming, you know, big fan bases like USC or Colorado, they're probably going to bump them up a little bit higher than what they actually are, just so the fans aren't like losing their minds like, oh my God, my team's rated so low. But realistically, the thing that's going to matter is when you you look at the individual player ratings, because they even do this with player overalls as well. There's certain specific ratings you can bump up to kind of artificially increase a player's overall. I can increase a guy's overall by just
guys, what he just said, it brings back memories, because it's the video that a lot of people probably was introduced to my channel because of a video similar to this. It was how to get 99 overall in Madden 22, I want to say. And that video pretty much is how my channel grew to where it is now. Of course, other reactions like the Georgia, was it Georgia versus Tennessee, I want to say, that blowout. But yeah, what he said is so true. Like, when people get mad at things like this, like, I bet I can kind of see it, but at the same time, you getting this mad over something that's going to change. This is what we think. All right, guys. We don't know how these teams are actually going to perform in real life, because by the time when we get this game, we get it before college football starts. Like, the real season starts. So we're not going to know. We're going to get to know these players and stuff like this that we probably did not know, and we probably was not going to know until maybe game 2, game 3 of the season, of the actual season. So when people get mad over this, gamers get mad over everything, okay? People in general gets mad over everything, but especially when it comes to gaming, the amount of just like things I've seen is just like, what? You mad over that? And then they play the game and you never hear them mention what they thought they was gonna be mad at. You never hear them mention that. So I for what it's worth,
for example,
you know?
Awareness in these games doesn't make a super drastic difference on field, because as long as your awareness is at a certain threshold that it's not god awful, you're gonna be decently aware. And then especially if you're clicking on to these players, you're really the awareness yourself. But if they want to increase the overall artificially, they can bump that up really high. The ratings that really matter in these games that you need to look at when it comes out is like, what are their speed, what are their throw power, what's their route running, what's their tackling, what's their coverage,
that's the most important.
Those are
especially for a quarterback.
So you see like a high overall that seems inflated. Like if you say, okay, Colorado's got an 84 defense, that just doesn't seem quite right. When the game comes out, if you go look at their defense, I would imagine they're going to have some pretty inadequate players on defense, and that's really what matters. So I think they like to dress up the overalls just to get people talking, just to get fan bases going back and forth. I don't really think, in my experience with Madden, those numbers have ever been accurate. The accurate numbers are going to be the individual player ratings. Now,
it could be different though this year. I agree with what he said, but you know, it could be different with college football, because they have said in the gameplay trailer when they was talking about the skill gap. You know, with the NFL and with Madden, the best player and the bad player, it's not an overpowered mix. Like, it's not like the best player is gonna every time catch the one-hander or this and that. In college football, it's like that. Hell, you can have a good player on offense facing off against their second best corner, and that second best corner is getting cooked. Okay, that's how drastic it is in college football. So I agree with what he said. People getting mad, of course, because people get mad over everything. Me personally, you know, I don't agree with some of them, but I'm not mad over it. No, I don't know how it's going to be. So we don't know how it's going to be, but that's going to do it for me, guys. Let me know if you are upset about these ratings, and let me know who is your favorite team in college. That's going to do it for me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this reaction. Love you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.